Welcome everyone to our new video on Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson, he is a uh, critic more than a poet. He's better known as a poet and a dramatist than as a critic. Okay, and then he has a honored place in the history of English criticism. But he wrote no regular treatise. There is plenty of criticism in practically all that he wrote in his poems and plays. Notably, we can say the works of him, that is the poet taster. Then, in his prefaces and dedications to his plays, in his conversation with the Drummond, and most of all, in his timber or discoveries made upon men and matter, it is commonly known as discoveries. And then it was widely and deeply read in the classics. um, it might be good enough, that is for a divinely gifted writer like Shakespeare, whose divine gift was more or less a guarantee against its abuse. It was nothing without its danger for lesser men who were neither so richly gifted by nature nor had undergone any kind of training in their craft. Okay, and then all the plays of Ben Jonson are modeled on the Latin drama, especially um the Latin writers, that is Seneca in tragedy and Plautus and Terence in comedy. In his critical views, his masters were different, that is he followed Aristotle, Horace and Latin writers of the Silver Age. And then Quintilian Pliny, he's an younger, and Petronius, they were the writers of the Silver Age. But among, that is between Quintilian Pliny and Petronius, Ben Jonson considers only Quintilian his favorite for him, because Quintilian's observation on the art of rhetoric he applies to the arts of poetry and drama. That is why he considered him as his favorite. And this makes him one of the first significant neoclassic critics in English. Neoclassic means, it simply means a critic who endeavors to develop his theory and practice on the basis of the achievement of the great Greek and Latin writers, and who tries to systematize classical practice and classical critical ideas into a set of rules for the guidance of modern writers. Okay, and then of his critical utterances, the most valuable thing is the discoveries. It was published 4 years after his death in 1641. It's just a collection of notes which Johnson had made from time to time, each with a Latin heading, and it varies in length from a mere sentence to a miniature essay. They are neither numbered nor classified, that is, they are not properly structured one. Okay, and then he's a neoclassic. We had already informed about that, but he did not love the classics for their own sake. He was at once with he was at once with the great Elizabethans in loving English more, but it was English who rised to the excellence of Greek and Latin. With his noble end in view, he applied himself to cure the ills that beset English literature, which could be summed up in one word, that is excess. Excess of passion, excess of imagination, excess of expression. Even the great Shakespeare, he was not free from them, that is, free from the term excess. They were all the consequence of ungoverned impulse, which needed some well tried, that is, those who are well versed in some in that particular field. And then the unity of action. Okay, what is unity of action? It was based on unity of action, unity of time, and unity of place. Okay, that is, we have already seen in the Aristotle's. Okay, the fable, it is the imitation of one entire and perfect action whose parts are so joined and knit together as nothing in the structure can be changed. We can't change anything in that structure. Everything is arranged perfectly already. Okay, and we cannot take anything, or we cannot impair something. It will create only disturbances to the whole part. Okay, so this lead him to a consideration of its dimensions. Okay, as in everybody he says, so in every action which is the subject of just a work, there is required a certain proportionable greatness, neither too vast nor too minute. And then poetry, he considers poetry as fiction, or the art of feigning. So he defines the term for poet as maker or feigner. Okay, the end and fruit of the poet's labor. He believes that poesy is the queen of arts, which had her original from heaven, received from Hebrews. Okay, so he lays down 5 requirements for a good poet, what he should be, by nature, by exercise, by imitation, and by art. Okay, Horace, it was only Horace who gave it its due place in literary achievement. So he has says something, that is arts and precepts. Arts and precepts is nothing but we cannot avail nothing except nature be beneficial and aiding. Next thing is exercising of those parts. That is, if his wit will not arrive suddenly at the dignity of the ancients, let him not yet fall out with it, quarrel, or be overly hastily in anger, but he had to come to it again upon better cogitation. Try another time with labor, that is hard work. And then imitation. The third important requisite is imitation, that is to be able to convert the substance or riches of another poet to his own use. That is what imitation is. And then the fourth requirement is exactness of study and multiplicity of reading, which makes a full man. That is, study makes a full man. It not only enable him to know the history or argument of poem and to report it, but it also enable him to master the matter and style, as to show how to handle, place, or dispose the techniques. Okay, the final thing is it will lead to perfection. Okay, so he is distrustful of it without the necessary discipline in the art of writing. He is more Horace than with Aristotle. Okay, so we have to language gives impression to the thoughts. Definitely, if we will have some kind of thoughts in our mind, but only the language will give impressions. Okay, so in what manner we are expressing that to the other persons. Okay, read the best authors. So in order to in order to become a writer, we need to first of all read the works of best authors, and we need to observe the best speakers, that is like LSRW skills. So we need to read the works of best authors, and we need to observe the best speakers, and also we want to exercise our own style. In spite of reading the works of best authors and observing the best speaker, we should also follow our unique style. We shouldn't lose our own style, because it will differ from person to person. Each person will have a unique style. So we should practice our own style. Close resemblance between Bacon's prose style and Johnson. So when we compare Bacon's prose style and Johnson's prose style, there we could find some kind of resemblances. Okay, and then to judge of poets as only the faculty of poets, and not of all poets but the best. As I have already told in a previous video that only the poet can judge the writings of another poet. It is only his duty. Okay, he should be honest and open and a free nature. Okay, and then it is custom that he should decide which word he should choose in order to fit in that particular context. So he cannot choose the words randomly, so he should be very cautious in choosing the words. Okay, and then he has given some kind of advice to the critics, that is he would not trust them unless they were gifted enough to enter into the intricates of the poetic art. Okay, Johnson's contribution, that is Ben Johnson's contribution to the critical art is the curve, that is the necessity of submission to a code of conduct both on the part of writer and the critic. He trusts training more than natural inspiration, that is often a law unto itself. That is one according to him, more than natural inspiration, there should be some kind of training. Only then a writer should shine or a critic will shine. Okay, so he has a lot of admiration towards training. So hope you're all clear with Ben Johnson. If you have any doubts or if you need any kind of clarifications, you can post it in the comment box, then it will be clarified in the next video. If you need any if you need videos on any other writers in particular, you can mention it in the post, you can mention it in the comment box, then it will also be posted later. So thank you for watching. Thank you.